High Lone Legends. Have you ever entered a room packed with voices, laughter, footsteps, and still felt like a ghost? Like you're physically there, but spiritually missing? Like you could scream and still go unheard? That wasn't a moment for Ryder. It was his existence. Daily, quiet corridors, silent stairs, and a constant ache of being invisible. Let's begin the story. Part 1. The Lonely Beginning. He wasn't hated. No one mocked him. No fist to his face. No cruel pranks on his locker. No, the world didn't break him with violence. It broke him with indifference. It acted like he wasn't even worth noticing. And sometimes, being ignored is a deeper wound than being attacked. At 17, Ryder was just the quiet kid. Not the genius. Not the rebel. Not the athlete. Just a name on the attendance sheet. Present, but not felt. People didn't whisper about him. It didn't whisper at all. No one asked about his weekend. No one saved him a seat at lunch. And his phone? That screen stayed black. Silent. Just like the world around him. There was a time when he tried. God, he tried hard. He signed up for the basketball team. Didn't make it past the first cut. Coach didn't even look him in the eye when he said, "Not this year, kid." He auditioned for school drama. Got 2 lines as tree number 3. He showed up to the debate club. No one asked him to speak. He even volunteered at the science fair. Spent 3 hours holding wires while someone else explained his idea. Every time he tried to break through the fog, the world pushed him back in and whispered, "You're not good enough." That sentence, it stuck, not just in his ears, but in his bloodstream. It echoed when he walked. It hummed while he ate. It screamed in his sleep. It was the background music to his silence. But pain doesn't always destroy. Sometimes it awakens. One gray evening, the sky hung low, thick with clouds that refused to cry. Ryder sat at the edge of a rusting bench in the old city park, empty as always. The cold bit his skin, but he didn't care. Something inside him was boiling hotter than the weather could cool. He stared at the cracked pavement beneath his shoes and clenched his fists so tight his nails dug into his palms. And then it happened. Not a scream, not a breakdown, no tears, just clarity. "Fine," he muttered under his breath. "If no one sees me, if no one believes in me, I will become someone they can't ignore." He stood up slowly, like a man rising from the ashes. "I'll train alone." That sentence wasn't a cry of defeat. It wasn't sadness. It was a vow. It was Ryder making peace with his loneliness and turning it into his greatest ally. Because in solitude, no one interrupts. No one judges. No one lies. No fake encouragement. No shallow cheers. Just you, your scars, and your fire. He started the next morning. No gym. No gear. Just a pair of beat-up sneakers, a cracked sidewalk, and a new mindset. He ran. 1 block, then 2. His lungs burned. His legs shook. His body screamed. Why are we doing this? No one cares. But Ryder had stopped listening to that voice. Instead, he remembered the feeling of sitting alone during every school event. He remembered every whispered, "You're not enough." And he used it as fuel, as rage, as drive. They didn't want him on their team? Fine. He'd build his own battlefield. Every morning, he ran before school. At lunch, while others scrolled their phones, he was doing push-ups behind the gym. At night, when the lights went off in homes around the block, Ryder was still awake, doing planks in silence, shadowboxing his fears. There was no music, no likes, no followers, just pain and a purpose. Solitude isn't silence, he whispered once more after his first week. It's preparation. He didn't want to fit in anymore. He wanted to stand out. The transformation wasn't just physical, it was mental, emotional. Every rep, every drop of sweat was therapy. He didn't need attention. He needed revenge, not on people, but on that old version of himself. The version who waited to be invited. The version who asked for permission to exist. Become so powerful they have no choice but to recognize you, he told himself. Train so hard they question their own work ethic. He read about greats who started alone. He studied stories of giants who rose from shadows. And one quote stuck with him more than anything. The lion doesn't care for the opinions of sheep. So Ryder became a lion. Not overnight, not in a week, but every day, step by step, alone. And something wild began to happen. He started smiling. Not because people finally noticed him, they still didn't, but because he no longer needed them to. He had found something stronger than applause. He had found purpose. Part 2, Building in the Shadows. Before dawn even dreamed of waking the world, Ryder was already up, not out of habit, but hunger. A hunger not for food, but for something deeper. Purpose, payback, power. While the rest of the world clung to their blankets, Ryder laced up his torn sneakers, stepped out into the cold darkness, and began his run. Alone, no music in his ears, no partner by his side, no finish line except the one in his mind. His breath cut through the icy morning air like steam from a boiling soul. Every step was defiance. Every heartbeat was a protest. They don't see me, he whispered to himself. Then I'll make sure they feel me. He didn't care about likes, shares, or followers. His mission wasn't online. It was underground. While the world chased dopamine from glowing screens, Ryder was out here chasing greatness with scraped knees and swollen knuckles. No one clapped for him. No one watched his progress. No selfies, no filters, just raw, ugly hustle. You don't need a crowd to become a champion, he reminded himself. You need discipline when no one's watching. When schoolmates were laughing at memes and scrolling mindlessly, Ryder was reading books on endurance, technique, mental toughness. He wasn't just training his body. He was building a mind that wouldn't break. And then came his sanctuary, the garage. It wasn't fancy. No neon lights. No mirrors. Just concrete, rust, and determination. He hung an old punching bag from the ceiling, patched in places, stained with weather and sweat. To others, it looked broken. To Ryder, it looked ready. The floor was dusty. The air was musty. But to him, it smelled like possibility. He turned that forgotten garage into a war zone. Weights stacked like loyal soldiers ready to be lifted. An old bench press, barely holding together. A cracked pull-up bar bolted to the wall. That garage didn't just echo with grunts and breaths. It echoed with transformation. You build your empire in silence, he thought, tightening his gloves, so you can shake the world when it's ready. While others posted fake grind on social media, Ryder was drenched in real sweat. His hands bled. His muscles screamed. But he didn't stop, because he wasn't doing it for applause. He was doing it for vengeance, on doubt, on silence, on every moment he was overlooked. There were days the rain hit so hard, it felt like needles piercing his skin. There were nights the cold numbed his fingers to the point he couldn't grip the bar. His body ached. His joints throbbed. But quitting? That wasn't an option. If pain is the price, he growled through gritted teeth, then let me bleed. He began seeing growth, not just in size, but in soul. The quiet kid who used to sit in the back of the class with his hood up was now carving a beast out of that silence. Each push-up was a scream. Each rep was revenge. Each drop of sweat said, I'm still here. Ryder no longer needed permission to matter. He gave himself his own validation. Train in darkness. He'd repeat like a mantra. So when the spotlight hits, you're ready to blind the world. And the beauty? No one knew. No one saw. He'd walk through school halls like nothing changed. Same hoodie, same silence. But inside, he was turning into something terrifying. Not for others, but for every limiting belief that had ever tried to cage him. Sometimes he'd catch a glance in the mirror, a glance of a boy transforming into a warrior. He didn't smile. He didn't flex. He just nodded, because the real ones don't celebrate early. They know the battle isn't over. He started timing himself, challenging himself, fighting his own best performance from yesterday, because he wasn't in competition with people anymore. I don't want to be better than them, he said while gasping for breath after his 200th push-up. I want to be better than who I was 10 minutes ago. This wasn't just training anymore. It was a declaration, a rebellion against mediocrity, a roar in a world full of whispers. Let them laugh now, he said, staring at the ceiling through sweat-blurred eyes. Because when I rise, they'll forget they ever doubted me. That garage, that cold, dark place, became the heart of his rebirth. It wasn't fancy, but it didn't need to be. Because legends aren't built in comfort. They're built in isolation, under pressure, and in the depths of pain. And Ryder? He was no longer training to be seen. He was training to be unforgettable. Part 3. Unseen but unshaken. 6 months. That's how long it took for silence to start echoing with results. Not loud, not in your face, but quiet tremors, the kind that shake the ground before anyone hears the quake. Ryder didn't grow overnight. He evolved silently, powerfully. His posture changed first. He no longer slouched through hallways like a background extra in someone else's movie. His spine was straight now, like a sword sharpened in private. His shoulders, once hunched with doubt, now stood broad with conviction. His eyes didn't wander anymore. They locked. They challenged. He still didn't speak much. But when he entered a room, the air shifted. Presence isn't noise. It's energy. And Ryder had become a walking storm. People started to notice, teachers, students, even the janitor. But they didn't understand. They saw the outer frame, but missed the inner fire. They didn't see the mornings when his lungs were burning at 5 a.m. They didn't hear the whispers he fought in his head at 3 a.m. where his muscles screamed for rest, but his soul whispered, one more set. Now, he walked through school, not seeking approval, but radiating purpose. Kids who never spoke to him began asking, Yo, bro, you've been working out. Where's this confidence coming from? You training with someone? Ryder would just smile. Not arrogance, not sarcasm, just the smile of a warrior who knows his story and doesn't owe it to anyone. It came from the days you didn't see, he'd reply, calm and precise. From the work done in the dark, when no one clapped, so I clapped for myself. That line hit people, but they couldn't process it, because they were too used to instant validation. Too used to performing for attention, not transformation. Champions are born when no one's watching, Ryder whispered to himself one night. The mirror is my audience. and I never lied to it. Then came a poster, stapled to a cracked gym wall in the town square. Local amateur boxing match. Sign up now. No entry fee. No professional gear needed. Just raw will. Ryder read it once and didn't blink. He didn't ask permission. He didn't consult anyone. He didn't even hesitate. He signed up because he wasn't training to impress. He was training to test. This was never about showing off. It was about showing up fully, fiercely, fearlessly. Fight day arrived. The gym smelled like sweat, metal, and old ambition. Bright lights flickered. Gloves hung. Coaches barked instructions. Fighters shadowboxed with headphones in and egos out. And then Ryder walked in. Alone. No coach. No corner team. No branded rope. Just a plain black hoodie, scuffed sneakers, and eyes that had seen war. The other fighters looked him up and down. One smirked. Another whispered, "Easy win." They saw a kid with no hype. No sponsor. Just quiet steps. What they didn't see was that this kid had already beaten every version of himself for the last 6 months. They didn't see the mornings he ran through pain, the nights he trained through tears, the battles with doubt, with weakness, with the urge to quit. Let them laugh, Ryder thought, stretching calmly in the corner. Because pain has already accepted me. They're just tourists. His name was called. He stepped into the ring. The ropes weren't unfamiliar. They reminded him of the tension he lived in daily. The bell rang, and the storm was unleashed. But Ryder didn't rush. He didn't swing wild. He moved with precision, calculated, controlled. He danced with grace only solitude teaches, grace that comes from knowing every breath, every movement, every inch of your strength. His opponent came in fast, swinging hard, full of adrenaline and noise. Ryder didn't flinch. He dodged, slipped, countered. Not once did fear blink in his eyes. Not once did chaos shake his frame. Because this wasn't his first fight. It was just the first one with an audience. Discipline defeats rage. Every time, Ryder reminded himself after slipping a punch and landing a clean jab. Round after round, he dominated. He didn't roar. He didn't taunt. He didn't flex. He just moved like a man who had trained alone so long. Nothing surprised him anymore. The crowd, once indifferent, began to shift. Whispers turned into gasps. Smirks faded. Eyes widened. Who the hell is this kid? But Ryder didn't care. Their applause was just noise. He had learned to live without it. The final bell rang. His hand was raised. He didn't jump, didn't shout, just nodded once. To the ref, to the ring, to the battle he had just won, and to the hundreds he had already fought in silence. This victory doesn't belong to tonight, he whispered under his breath. It belongs to every morning when I wanted to quit, but didn't. That night, as he walked home under the cold sky, trophy in hand, sweat still dripping down his face, he didn't post anything. He didn't announce it. He didn't tell his classmates the next day. Because real champions don't need noise. Their growth screams for them. Part 4. From outcast to outperformer. The gym was still buzzing, even after the crowd had started to leave. The ring sat in silence, ropes trembling from the force of the final round. Whispers swirled in the corners like smoke. Who is this kid? Where did he come from? Why haven't we heard of him? They hadn't seen him bleed. They hadn't heard him breathe fire in the quiet of dawn. They didn't know his pain, his process, or his purpose. And that's what made his victory legendary. Not the scorecard, not the trophy, but the fact that no one saw it coming. No coach, no sponsor, no hype video, just raw, forged, unapologetic discipline. Ryder didn't stick around for applause. He stepped out of the spotlight just like he stepped into it, silently. His head wasn't spinning from glory. It was locked on the next mountain. Because winners celebrate. But legends? Legends build. That one fight didn't define him. It unleashed him. He went back to the garage, back to the same cracked floor, the same rusty weights, the same dark silence that raised him. But this time, he wasn't just training. He was transforming his entire lifestyle. He started sleeping earlier, waking sharper, eating cleaner, reading deeper. Every second became strategic. No wasted breath. No wasted movement. No wasted life. He wasn't just becoming stronger. He was becoming a standard. But as his presence grew, so did his purpose. He noticed something at lunch, in class, in the hallways. There were others like him, kids he used to be, alone, silent, unseen, sitting with trays full of untouched food and eyes full of invisible battles. He didn't see weakness. He saw potential. He saw fire that had never been lit. So he began reaching out, quietly at first, slipping a pair of old gloves onto a desk, whispering, "You ever tried boxing?" Leaving notes that said, "Your silence doesn't make you weak. It makes you ready." And one by one, loners began to lift their heads. He gathered them, the misfits, the overlooked, the rejected, not to start a club, but a movement. He called it Lone Legends. It wasn't about fame. It wasn't about followers. It was about creating warriors who didn't wait for approval, who didn't need noise to feel real, who trained in shadows and rose like storms. Train alone, Ryder would say to every new recruit, so you never depend on anyone to light your fire. They didn't meet in a fancy gym. They trained in garages, in abandoned lots, on rooftops, on broken courts under flickering streetlights. They didn't have uniforms. They had scars, and every scar told a story. One kid had been cut from every team. Another never spoke above a whisper. One girl wore a hoodie every day to hide her bruises, not from fists, but from words. Ryder didn't preach. He trained beside them, showed them how to punch, how to breathe, how to focus, but more importantly, how to believe. Discipline isn't a crowd sport, he told them between sets. It's a contract with yourself, and you sign it every damn day. The Lone Legends grew, not in numbers, but in depth, each one stronger, sharper, and slowly the world began to take notice. Not because they shouted, not because they begged, but because excellence is too loud to ignore. People started asking questions. Who are these kids training in the cold? Who's behind this group that's producing warriors? Why does their silence feel louder than our screams? Ryder didn't answer. He let the results speak. A tournament, then two, then a district-level win. The once-forgotten faces were now stepping into rings, arenas, classrooms, with fire in their eyes and steel in their spines. But Ryder? He stayed in the shadows, because it was never about being seen. It was about becoming undeniable. He did interviews, sure, when he had to, but he always ended them with one quote carved deep in his bones. Never train for attention. Train until attention chases you. He wasn't trying to be a hero. He was just proving one thing, that an outcast, when left alone with enough pain, enough hunger, and enough time, can become the most dangerous force in the world. And Ryder? He wasn't just an outcast anymore. He had become an outperformer, not because he changed the world, but because he changed himself and gave others permission to do the same. Part 5, Becoming Unstoppable. Years rolled by like quiet waves. Tom didn't ask for permission, it just moved. But Ryder? He didn't just move with time, he dominated it. Now, he stood on championship stages, the lights blinding, the crowd roaring, cameras flashing like electric rain. The world finally looked at him. They chanted his name. They asked for autographs. They screamed with joy when he raised his fists. But inside, Ryder still stood in the garage. The floor was still cracked in his mind. The cold steel bar still pressed against his trembling chest. The punching bag still swung with rage and rhythm. He hadn't forgotten a second, because that's where it started. That's where he was forged. Not in spotlights, but in shadows. Not on stage, but in silence. Never forget where your fire was first lit, Ryder whispered backstage one night. Because that's the flame that never dies. He looked at his own hands, knuckles scarred, fingers bent, veins like battle lines. Each mark told a story no audience would ever hear. He had become unstoppable, but not because he was unbreakable. He had simply learned to keep building himself back. The difference between champions and legends? Champions are seen. Legends are remembered. And Ryder? He wasn't here for trophies. He was here to leave a blueprint. He started telling his story. Not in ego, but in service. Because he knew the next generation of loners, misfits, invisible warriors were still out there. Watching. Waiting. He stood on mic stands and locker rooms, on podcasts and underground gyms, and set it straight. You don't need a cheering squad. You need a reason. He didn't romanticize pain. He didn't pretend it was easy. He said, it hurt. Every damn day. But pain is where purpose is born. He reminded people, greatness isn't gifted. It's earned, and not in crowds. But when you're gasping for air alone on a sidewalk no one else is willing to walk, you become unstoppable, he said to a room full of young fighters. The day you stop waiting to be seen and start seeing yourself. His story spread like wildfire, not because it was flashy, but because it was real. It wasn't about muscles. It was about mindset. It wasn't about noise. It was about nerve. He started mentoring again, but on a bigger scale. A network of lone legends began rising across cities. Kids training in parking lots, on rooftops, in old garages with flickering bulbs and heavy dreams. He gave them gloves, but more than that, he gave them grit. Don't wait to be invited, he'd write in his messages to new members. Create your own table, then flip it if it doesn't fit your fire. He didn't forget the pain, because that pain had built the unbreakable core he now walked with. People asked him, "What's your secret?" He smiled and said, "I trained when no one was watching. I kept going when no one believed. I kept building in the dark until the dark couldn't hold me anymore." And then his words reached beyond just athletes. Office workers, students, artists, fighters, fathers. People everywhere began whispering his mantra like a sacred chant. Train alone, build alone, rise alone, not because they wanted to be alone forever, but because they finally realized they could count on themselves. Ryder never begged the world to believe in him. He forced the world to witness him. And now, he gave that fire to others. One story, one voice, one unseen soul at a time. Underscore, 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 underscore. So if you're reading this and you're in a place where no one sees you, no one texts, no one calls your name, no one saves you a seat. Good. That's your starting line. Ryder was you. And maybe right now, you're still sitting in your version of the garage. Still unheard. Still wondering if you matter. Still afraid you'll never be enough. But listen hard. You don't need applause to start. You need courage to continue. You don't need a crowd. You need commitment. Not tomorrow. Right now. Build in silence. Train when no one claps. Sweat when no one watches. Cry, break, scream, but don't stop. Because one day, yes, one day, the world will ask, where did you come from? And you'll smile. Not because they finally see you, but because you'll know the truth. I came from the silence. I was built when you ignored me. I became unstoppable when I stopped needing you. And with that, Yanni, thanks for watching. Until next time, keep training, keep building, keep rising. Alone, bold, and unstoppable.